Hey guys, how are you? I'm sure many of you have heard about the Siege Onager, which is a very powerful and very effective siege weapon. However, one siege weapon that doesn't get that much love is the Heavy Scorpion. While it's certainly not as spectacular as Onagers, it does have some uses, and when used correctly, it can be very powerful. And so, in this video, I'm going to tell you what are the best civilizations to use Heavy Scorpions with. Before I do this, however, I'm going to talk about how to use Heavy Scorpions in order to give this some very important context. And so, let's get started. To start off, let's look at the Heavy Scorpion's stats. Now, when fully upgraded, it costs 75 wood and 75 gold. For this, you get 50 HP, 17 pierce attack, as well as 7 pierce armor but no melee armor. You also have 7 range, or 1 more after Siege Engineers. Some hidden statistics is that it has plus 8 bonus damage versus elephants, plus 4 versus buildings, and plus 2 versus rams. It has a reload time of 3.6 seconds with 100% accuracy and a move speed of 0.65 tiles per second. What this means is that while it does have very high attack, it has a slow movement and attack speed, which means it's very difficult to hit and run, and it is very vulnerable to melee attacks as well as onagers. With the same attack as hand cannoneers for a much more expensive price and having all these vulnerabilities, you might be thinking, why would you even make Heavy Scorpions? If I want Siege as a support unit, I should probably just make Onagers, right? Well, not exactly. There are some other things that really need to be looked at that really distinguish the Heavy Scorpion from both the Onager and the hand cannoneer. First, the Scorpion Bolt actually deals damage to multiple enemies. What it does is it deals damage to all the enemies that are in the Scorpion Bolt's flight path. How this mechanic works is that the Scorpion Bolt deals 17 damage to the targeted unit minus the armor. All other units take half of this damage. You can see that all of these champions have about half of their HP left when the targeted champion is killed. Now, using this knowledge, we can actually calculate the real damage per shot of the Scorpion. Now, while Scorpions can only target units that are up to 8 tiles away, the Scorpion Bolt actually travels up to 10 tiles. Meaning, if you have 1 unit per tile, the damage per shot formula is not 17 attack minus armor, but instead 17 attack minus armor divided by 2 multiplied by 9. Versus units with no pierce armor, this can yield a whopping 306 damage per shot. Now, in reality, it's a little bit different because you won't have a straight line of 10 units per tile. However, you can still hit this many units if the enemy is clumped up enough. As you can guess, this means that Scorpions will do far better versus clumped up units than versus individual units. Which is probably why you don't see them all that much in random match, because you don't get units clumped up in really large numbers. However, in deathmatch, which is what I play, you'll see this all the time, which is where Scorpions can be very powerful. However, there's even more reasons to use the Heavy Scorpion over the Onager. Now, as we all know, Onagers have a very high attack, and when used properly, they can devastate infantry armies in seconds. However, when used incorrectly, they'll also destroy your own armies, rendering you far less powerful. This means that in an infantry pile-up, oftentimes Scorpions will be far more effective than Onagers because you won't be dealing extra damage to your own units. Now, in an archer battle, it's a little bit different, because the archers actually don't pile up, and in this situation, siege onagers are definitely better. However, a few good scorpion shots will still help, and in small numbers, scorpions directly counter archers because of the scorpion's high pierce armor. Both of these points mean that the Heavy Scorpion is a very good anti-infantry substitute for siege onagers for many civs. Something to point out is that only 5 civilizations have both Heavy Scorpion and Siege Onager, so the choice may actually be made for you. Another thing to note is that no elephant civ has Siege Onagers, and Heavy Scorpions will be far better at killing halberdiers, especially because they won't team kill your elephants. Now, Scorpions do have some significant vulnerabilities to cavalry and to siege onagers. This means that whenever you use Scorpions, you need to use them in combination with another unit. I find that Scorpions are best used as a support unit to devastate enemy infantry and to help with and versus enemy elephants. And so, now that we know all this information, we can finally rank all the Scorpions. At bottom place comes all the civilizations without heavy Scorpion, which are the Aztecs, Byzantines, Huns, Indians, Italians, Koreans, Malians, Portuguese, Saracens, Spanish, Vietnamese, and the Britons in Age of Conquerors. Now, I'm going to guess that there are some situations where you still might want to make Scorpions as these civilizations. However, as a deathmatch player, this is a deathmatch list, and that means that these civilizations are by far the worst when it comes to Scorpions. At 9th place comes all the civilizations that have heavy Scorpion but not siege engineers, which are the Goths, Mayans, Persians, and Turks. Even though their heavy Scorpions lack the range that some of the other civilizations have, the reality is that I'll still make the heavy Scorpions for these civilizations in many situations because it works very well versus masses of infantry regardless of its range. Next come all the civilizations that have generic, fully upgraded heavy Scorpions. These civilizations are the Berbers, the Britons in the HD expansions, the Burmese, Franks, Incas, Japanese, Magyars, Malay, Teutons in Age of Conquerors, and the Vikings. Again, just like every civilization, whether or not I make the heavy Scorpions for these guys is going to be situational. However, when I do so, I will be confident that they will do the job well. At number 7 in my rankings would be the Teutons in the HD expansions. This is because their new unique technology is Ironclad, which gives the Scorpions 4 melee armor. As I'm sure you can imagine, this makes the heavy Scorpions tank melee attacks far more effectively than a generic one. They tie with the Celt Scorpions for surviving versus Paladins, but they survive versus Hussars and Camels longer than any other civilization. The reality is, though, that in the majority of the time, I would simply make the Teutonic Elite Teutonic Knights, because they are far better versus cavalry, and to save the workshop creation time for onagers. At 6th place comes the Slavs, whose siege weapons are 15% cheaper. This means that they're easier to field, and I would definitely make them versus masses of infantry. However, they don't actually perform better in a one-on-one situation compared to a generic Scorpion. While there is a little bit of difference in the quality of the previous heavy Scorpions, the reality is that they're all pretty much the same thing. However, when we move into the top 5 Scorpion civilizations, we see some drastic changes. Moving into top 5 territory, we have the Mongols. Their unique technology drill makes them move a lot faster. This means that they're a whole lot easier to use and to keep alive. This bonus helps to hit and run versus infantry, and it can also help it to survive versus onagers and cavalry. It can be very effective, especially versus Goths, but it does take a lot of micro to fully use this technology, and in all honesty, if you're using this micro, siege onagers are going to be the far more effective choice. At number 4 come the Ethiopians with their unique technology torsion engines. What this does for Scorpions is that each Scorpion bolt will actually damage units not only along its path, but right next to its path. You can see that when it comes to damage output versus a group over a long period of time, they have the highest damage output. However, in a short period of time, the Khmer, Chinese, and Celts will all kill units faster. These Scorpions are a nice replacement for the team-killing onagers of the Ethiopians, however, it gets even better moving forward. At the number 3 spot, we have the Chinese, with their unique technology which is rocketry, which, among other things, allows the heavy Scorpions to have 4 more damage. Now, the Chinese do miss siege engineers, so they have less range than all of the other siege engineer civs. However, despite the fact that it can be a little bit more difficult to use at some times, the reality is that this extra attack means that they have damage output that is comparable to even that of the Khmer. It also means that when you're caught off guard if you don't have a massive Scorpions, they can still defend themselves to a somewhat better extent because they'll deal with the lone cavalry here or there a lot faster. At number 2, we have the Celts, which have 3 bonuses that benefit their siege and Scorpions. Their first bonus is Furor Celtica, which gives all their siege weapons 40% more HP. For the Scorpions, this means that they'll be a lot tougher, obviously, surviving versus all attacks longer. They don't die in a direct hit from an onager, but they do die from a direct siege onager. However, the splash damage that the Siege Onager and the Onager deals isn't going to be as much as normal, so even versus Siege Onagers, this bonus does help. Their next bonus is that they fire 25% faster, which means they have a higher damage output, which is just about the same as the Chinese. And because they're created 20% faster, they're also easier to spam. The Celts do have very good Siege Onagers, and it's probably better to make those in most situations. However, again, versus large masses of infantry, it'll be very worth your while to make heavy Scorpions. If you can afford it, they even complement the Celtic Siege Onagers very well, because they can deal with the more short-ranged attacks, while the Siege Onagers can deal with the more long-range opponents. If you want to have a lot of fun, you can even go for the Celtic Siege Masterpiece, where you only make siege weapons. It's probably not the best strategy in a competitive game, but in games with friends, it can be a lot of fun. However, in my opinion, it gets even better. At the number 1 spot, the best heavy Scorpion civilization is the Khmer. Now, they have 2 bonuses. Their first bonus is double crossbow. This means that their Scorpions actually fire 2 bolts instead of 1. Now, the second bolt isn't nearly as powerful as the first bolt, but I'll go into more specifics about this in a later date. However, when it comes to the damage output, no other civilization has the same damage output as the Khmer in a short period of time, because it kills units faster than all the other civilizations. That second bolt even shoots off at somewhat of an angle, which means they do have a little bit wider area of an attack too. Now, their second Scorpion bonus, which is that they have 1 extra range, is also very helpful because it means they will engage the enemy sooner. It also means it's a lot easier to avoid the enemy Onager and Bombard Cannon attacks. If you are forced to engage those units with your Scorpions, which you never should by the way, the Khmer Scorpions have a high advantage over the other ones because they'll be able to attack a lone Onager or Siege Onager before any of their opponents. Compared to the Chinese, who don't have siege engineers but do have extra attack, it's quite clear that the Khmer have an obvious advantage. When it comes to avoiding Onager shots, they're probably not as good as the Mongol heavy Scorpions if you're able to micro the units, but if you're in a deathmatch game and it's really difficult to pay attention to everything that's going on, the Khmer Scorpions have the advantage that they don't absolutely require micro in order to avoid the enemy attacks. Yeah, it's probably good not to engage Onagers at all, regardless of what civilization you are with Scorpions. However, this is kinda nice. And finally, Khmer are the only civilization on this list that actually has both a heavy Scorpion bonus and elephants. Anyways, I hope that after watching this video, you'll be able to more fully use the heavy Scorpion in the proper way, and you'll be able to see that it's not actually completely useless. It does have some niche uses, but it fulfills these uses very well. In my opinion, in deathmatch games, I would much rather make Scorpions than even hand cannoneers when taking on masses of infantry if I'm able to defend them with something like elephants or champions. Anyways, it's been good making this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. See you later, have fun.